Hi, you entrepreneurs. Today we have Miha. He is the fail coach. His story is an interesting one. He was raised with the idea that everything good was him and giving so much praise that he could do nothing wrong. He had to come to a strong realization that even the bad was him too. And it took him a long time into his life to figure that out after everything kind of fell apart. He says that he's failed in every single aspect of life, and that's where he helps people grow from. If you're failing at anything, if you've thought about giving up on something, take a listen to this. Of course, please subscribe. Love to hear your feedback. Thanks, everyone.
Welcome to the road to growth, success of an entrepreneur.
We've raised the bar.
Learn firsthand from successful business owners and create your own path to success.
I'm going to show you how great I am.
It's time to hit the road to growth with team lead of the Enriquez Group, Realtor Vinny.
All right, so we are here with Miha, and I'm not going to try your last name. We were talking about you beforehand. Do you want to give everyone your last name?
Hi, Vinny. So it's Matlievski.
Okay. Yeah, I'm so bad when it comes to name. I get better and better the more podcasts I do, the more interviews I do. But man, I love your story. Like we got connected through another colleague in the podcast world, the Quest of Success, and you're a failure coach. I mean, I've had other business coaches, mindset coaches, and where you came from is, I think, just a great story. In 2009, we'll get there, about the whole failure, losing $20 million, like just big numbers right there. But talk to us more about who you are and what you do.
Well, I'm the fail coach. That's how everybody calls me. That's how everybody knows me. And it's because I constantly talk about how important it is, especially for entrepreneurs. I mean, for everybody, but we entrepreneurs, we are the crazy ones. We want to change the world. We want to achieve these huge things. And the bigger, your what you're trying to achieve, the more you have to push yourself out of the comfort zone. And the more you push yourself out of the comfort zone, the more likely it is that you will fail along the process, along the steps, because you're doing a lot of the things for the second time. And that's, it's very hard to fail when you've done something for 1,000 times already. But that's when something is already in your comfort zone. So that's why I always say that for us entrepreneurs, it's even more important that we have this healthy relationship with failure, to see it for what it is, so that it doesn't bring you down, that you don't go into that roller coaster and negative emotions and negative self-talk, because nothing good will happen there. You will be just more depressed, anxious, stress levels go extremely high. You can come very close or even commit a suicide. Failure is actually the number one reason for entrepreneurs to commit suicide, something not many people know. We all know that fear of failure is the number one dream killer. Any entrepreneur, whoever you will talk with, who is, I don't know, doing 6, 7, 8, 9 figures, like every real entrepreneur, without trying to hide from all the failures and just pretend that they are all success and nothing else, if they're honest, they will tell you that they had to overcome a lot of struggles, a lot of roadblocks, a lot of failures, a lot of mishaps on that journey to be where they are. And so the thing is that it's more important. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry to get on you. No, I totally agree with you. I mean, that was one of the ideas behind bringing this podcast out there. I think social media is such a good thing, because that's the only way we would have got connected, through social media. But also, too, if you're weighing yourself against other people out there and you're seeing their successes and you have a failure there, it can be deflating. But you have to realize that every post that you see on social media, every person on stage has some sort of failure that they've kind of fought through.
Yeah, and I mean, if you see somebody who's pretending that all they do is succeed, run away from them, because that's BS. It's impossible. It's literally impossible. Maybe sometimes you are lucky and you try something and bam, your first try is successful. But that's events here and there that can't be on the long run. In a year, an entrepreneur will fail so many more times than how many successes they will have. But those successes definitely outweigh the failures if you keep going. And failure is what usually stops you. And that's when you really fail.
Well, it's so wild. I still heard so many different quotes, talked to so many different people that talk about that avenue. Like I had an artist on my podcast. He was talking about the idea of failure, and every time he got a no, it just meant he's one step closer to that yes. Or failure. I mean, it's the same kind of idea when, like, what Thomas Edison, right? Where he was talking about, well, you failed 1,000 times. Because I didn't fail 1,000 times. I basically tried 1,000 different ways and finally got to the right way or something. You know what I mean? Like, there's so many different people out there. It's just the idea that you have to look at failure in a different light, like you're talking about.
I mean, I think it's an English saying to be that you need to first crawl to be able to walk, something like that. Am I right? And this, like, the same goes with success and failure. You need to really know how to deal with failure before you can succeed, because the road to success is through failures. I mean, sometimes there are little failures, especially when you know how to manage failures, when you have a system in place where you are measuring stuff, you have KPIs, you have a BI system where you can see the dashboards and you can react to things happening to you super fast. So really the way to fight failure, well, not to fight it, to embrace failure would be the right say here, is to have a logical system in place, because failure is emotional. You set a goal. Usually that goal has high hopes, high dreams behind it. And then you don't hit that goal. And then you spin in the other direction. You go into very high negative emotions. And if you include logic here and, processes, KPIs, benchmarking, BI, that will put logic into perspective, because failure is a result of process, of steps from A to B. B is where your goal is. A is where you are today.
And I think the one thing that we might have brought it up a little bit, but the idea is for people listening, failure is good if you learn from the failure, right? If you're failing the same thing over and over, well, then that's probably a different story.
Yeah, I mean, if you keep doing same things and expect that suddenly something will change, well, I think it was Albert Einstein that said that that's a sign that you're a bit crazy.
Exactly. So walk us through. I know I brought up the 2019 bankruptcy, but there's probably stuff before then, I'm guessing. How did you get to that point? Walk us through your life.
Well, I'm going to give you a shorter version of the story because, it's been 23 years since I started my entrepreneurial journey. How do you say that? When you don't finish high school?
High school dropout?
Yes. So I dropped out of high school when I was 17. And that's how my entrepreneurial journey started when I was 18. I started.
Did you not like school, or what happened? Why did you drop out?
I had the most perfect childhood, and I could never do anything wrong to my parents. And so I was just this rebel without any cause in high school. Like, I'm not gonna memorize this stuff. This is stupid. What will this benefit me in real life and stuff like that? So I was just rebelling. My parents, they weren't like, oh no, you need to, buckle up and sit down and study and this and that. Like, whatever I did was okay. I had no accountability from them.
Were you only child?
Yes, I'm very spoiled. That's why I get along with millennials a lot. That was the first thing. And then my father had a very small family business. And that's where I started after high school. That was kind of the start of my entrepreneurial journey. And again, I was more or less just son by occupation, partying, a good paycheck, and very little to do in the workspace. But unfortunately, my father was suddenly diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and 3 weeks later, he was dead. And I had to take over, and I had no clue what on earth I'm doing. and how do you run a company? And so very soon that company started going towards bankruptcy. But I was lucky enough that I found people who saw something in me, that I'm good with sales and networking. And they said, well, we'll invest something in the company. We'll take over the majority share. We'll take care of the business, and you just do your thing, and we'll support you with everything. And let's make this happen. And things really picked up very quickly. I was doing 100, 150, 200% more in turnover month from month. And soon, money was flowing again. Life was good again. Crazy vacations, Michelin 3-star restaurants, crazy cars, you name it. I was 20 something, I was flying high.
What kind of business was it?
It was in the energy field. We were wholesalers of high voltage equipment like transformers, cables for transmissions, and so on. And I suddenly had the freedom again, and I was full of ideas, what problems to solve, like the true entrepreneur. But since those guys took over majority share in my company, it was like, I'm just create my own companies. But I haven't learned anything about how to actually run a company. And that was around 2005, 2006, 7, 8. So those were the very good years in Europe. I was, the thing was that I was flying on that positive macroeconomic situation. I was riding the wave, just like today, real estate is rising, stocks are going up. Like right now, you have to be pretty stupid to go bankrupt right now. Banks are throwing money, even if you come up with something half decent, they will finance it and so on. So I was riding that wave, and I understand that now looking back. But at that time, I was convinced that I'm like the king of business. I'm the god of business. I don't know what, King Midas, whatever I touch turns into gold. And the biggest thing is that I never laid any solid foundations in my business. Any, in me, because you, the entrepreneur, you're that first pillar of the foundation. So I never learned things that, an entrepreneur should learn, soft skills, hard skills. I was just good at sales. But I created 4 more companies and many new projects, and everything was just really, really flying. None of my companies was below multiple 7 figures in yearly revenue, even multiple 8. One of them was in real estate. I was an investor in this huge real estate project, huge, 60, 70 million US, something like that, 50, something like that. And you can imagine in 2009, the crisis came to Europe. And my businesses were like that first house from the Three Little Pigs story, made out of straws, without any foundation. When that crisis came, the first wind just blew everything away. The company that was in real estate tanked because suddenly the prices dropped so much that it wasn't anymore. I would build for more than I would be able to sell for. And the bank just said, we want out, because I was financing everything through the bank. And all my other companies were co-signers of the agreement. I personally was co-signer of the agreement. And so basically in one single day, I lost 20 million in my personal net worth, 15 million in my personal net worth, and I went 5 million in personal debt. Yeah. In Europe, at least at that time, if you were a business owner and your companies went bankrupt, you didn't pay the last paycheck and taxes, you weren't able to do personal bankruptcy, which would, waive the whole thing away. So I was left with that burden. And, week after week, I had no idea how to solve it. Phone calls became, we want to sue you. Then phone calls turned into, we'll do this and this to you, like mafia's calling you. You wake up, phone starts ringing, you go into depression immediately. You just stay in that state for a whole day. There's this whole nuclear reactor in your head, overthinking, thinking. You stop seeing any ideas. You stop seeing any future, any goals. Everything just becomes dark. There's no tunnel, no light, no nothing. You start asking yourself, like, why would I even, is it worth living, like, if this is what it is? Because at one point I believed that, I used up all the good times and this is it. Like, this from now on, this is my new reality until I die. And then, of course, you start thinking, like, what's the point in going on? And so the idea of suicide starts creeping in. And, the more you think about it, the more appealing it is, that silence, everything would just go away.
Do you remember rock bottom? Like, was there a moment of rock bottom where you're at the closest of possibly killing yourself or possibly doing something like that?
Yeah, there was this one evening in 2010. I was on my balcony smoking my cigarette. The apartment was about to be taken away from me in a few days. And I just climbed over and I was just holding myself with one hand, and I was already like 45 degrees over, looking down. And the first thought was, am I going to do this right, or I will mess this up as well and just end up on a wheelchair? I mean, if I'm going to jump, I want to make sure that, I end it. I don't want to stay alive, and that's it. So that was the first thought. And then I had this huge argument with myself, and I used a whole lot of very juicy words that I'm not going to repeat on your podcast. We don't want to get that censored. But it was along the line, like, how did you make so many mistakes? You messed up everything. And, everything was you. And suddenly I heard that you. And now if we go back in time a little bit, that perfect childhood, for me, it was only logical when something good happened, that's all me. And whenever something bad happened to me, I was unable to understand that I can do something wrong, this perfect child. So I was always able to find something or somebody else to blame. And this time I had nothing. And flashes started happening in my head. I signed that agreement. I did this. I chose that. I partnered with this person. I. And it was the first time ever when I really took ownership of everything.
Was this epiphany came when you're on the balcony, or when did this epiphany?
Yeah. I was like holding with one hand and just yelling loudly at myself.
Yeah.
And then I realized, oh my God, if with all those mistakes, I was still able to come to that point of personal net worth, if I actually take all of that and learn, do better, choose better, change habits, you name it, I can do it again. And that was that little ray of light that I needed to climb back in, to sit down, to start writing everything I need to do. And to this day, being the fail coach, so, I don't get clients that everything is perfect. I haven't met a single entrepreneur who struggled with something that was unknown to me. So I really messed everything up in business that you can mess up. I'm still waiting, hopefully that one day there will be somebody who will say, oh, I struggle with this. And I will be, yes, I never struggled with that. But so far, I was really thick-headed. I mean, I really was, making same mistakes and doing same thing and just expecting, I don't know what to change. And like all of the things that we were talking in the beginning, that was me. And that's the first time when I really took charge of that ownership of my past.
How did you jump from that moment right there into being a failure coach? You're writing everything down. Do you start looking for clients? What happened?
No. That was a long journey. I mean, when I did the list, I realized that there's so much on it. And so the journey, it took me about 3.5 years of really, really hardcore self-development, business development, learning, changing. I had to reinvent myself basically. And then in 2014, I started another startup, energy efficiency startup this time. So we were helping. I came up with a very unique way of how to help big corporations.
To stop right there for a second. So it took you about 4 years to get back on your feet.
Yes.
From where you were.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, not back to my feet, back to creating a startup.
Back to
back
kind of
on
like
my feet was even later on.
Yeah. Okay.
We were helping big corporations and retail chains on saving how much electricity and gas they use. And I was able to scale that business from 0 to multiple 8 figures in monthly revenue in less than a year to multiple 9 figures next year. I really took everything that I've learned and I did everything differently. And it was really more to show to myself, to prove to myself that I really learned from my past mistakes. And of course, repaying that debt. And then in 2016, I had an exit. I was able to walk away from day one because of the systems and everything that was in place. And then I repaid all the past debts, which accumulated by that time to almost 7 million with all the interest and lawsuits and everything. And that's when I found myself with a very strange thing, the freedom of time and money, or what I call the ultimate freedom, which is the freedom of choice.
Before you get into that part of life, question. Now, did you have a game plan? Because usually, like, there's a saying that goes that people overestimate what they can do in 1 year and underestimate what they can do in 5 years. Did you have a 6-year game plan to get you back to start?
Well, I didn't thought that I can scale that fast, to be honest. That wasn't the plan. But I had a very, very solid plan. Everything. I mean, I started with laying down a very solid foundation. I was able to find investors from start. I was leveraging immensely on everything that I could leverage on. But I never thought that it will go so quick. But I was prepared to really put insanity into that. And when I saw how good it's going, I just added on to that because I saw, I can even quicker come to that point of where I can repay everything and get that off my chest.
Okay, so then back to now you have money, you have some free time. In 2016, what happens next?
Well, that was when the whole coaching thing. I was more. I mean, I never planned to be a coach. I just took some time off because doing that for the past 2 years was insane. I mean, on emotional level, on physical level, I was tired. I was sleeping so little. I was pushing myself, my team, everything, and it was really, really hard on all levels. So I just needed a long vacation. But in that vacation, I realized that, even when I went, I went to Lisbon. And what I did after 2 or 3 days of partying, I started looking for meetups to hang out with fellow entrepreneurs. I would go to meetups. I would go to startup incubators and, people would ask me, well, who are you? And I would tell them my story. And then they started asking me, oh, well, how would you do this? How would you do that? And I just started helping people, helping entrepreneurs. And then
what was your idea of going to the meetups? Because that's so, I've never heard that before, going on a trip, going on vacation and then partying and then going to meetups in like different cities where you're located. I mean, what was the idea behind that?
I just love being around entrepreneurs. I mean, if I have to talk about the weather and the ladies and cars and politics and stuff like that for a few days, I mean, kill me. I need fellow entrepreneurs around me. I realized that deep down inside me, I'm an entrepreneur, that's in my DNA. And even where I live now, I create meetups all the time so that I get to meet fellow entrepreneurs, and that's who I hang out with. I literally have very little people outside of the entrepreneurs that I hang out with. I need that. I love that brainstorming, solving problems, this, that, the excitement, the adrenaline, the rush. And then as I was doing more and more of that, I realized how good it feels, how even 10 times or 100 times better it feels when you help somebody else than if you do something for yourself. And that's how I ended up being a coach. It was very, very unintentional. I think even when I started, I was like, oh, because, I knew the coaches from the online world, and I was like, oh, come on, I don't want to be one of those guys, pretending this and that and blueprints and, I'll make you rich in 3 days with half an hour a day and things like that. But then, I said to myself, well, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it my way. And that's why when I was thinking about the name, a friend of mine, he said, well, you're constantly telling everybody about, how good you have to be with failure, embrace it, this, that. Every story that you starts with, I tried this, I failed, and this is what I did. He said, be a fail coach. And I was like, I like that. I really like that. And I'm doing things very differently, but it's aligned with what I believe is the right thing. And
So if you could look at your younger self, that person that dropped out of high school, what kind of advice do you think you'd give them?
I mean, in all honesty, if we're talking about myself, nothing. Because I wouldn't want to change anything that happened, because I appreciate what happened to me. Because of that, I am who I am today, and I'm doing what I'm doing, and I'm in love with my life today. So I wouldn't say anything to myself, but when I am talking and working with millennials, with younger people, or even, with older people, two things. Learn and practice how to develop healthy relationship with failure, because you will fail a lot. The bigger the thing you want to achieve, the more you will fail. And the second thing is always put foundations in place first. You wouldn't want to start building your house from the second floor up. You always want to start with a plan, foundations, and then you can start building up.
So building a plan, I think that's a tough thing. There's so much, you talked about already, about coaches, online, social media. There's so much information out there. How do you know if the person you're getting the information from is speaking the truth or just speaking BS? Is there a easy way of looking at that?
Well, the first thing is you have to take it, often I see people just jump into things. It's almost like I go out on a Friday night, I meet a girl, we have a one-night stand, and then for the breakfast, I just pop the question. You wouldn't want to do that, am I right?
Yeah.
You would go on a few dates and try to talk a little bit about the important stuff, maybe even see if they walk the talk and so on. Like, the first thing is you need to understand what's important to you. Like, for me personally, when I'm working with other coaches, and I do have my own coaches, so that's the first thing. If a business coach tells you that they don't need a coach because they're business coach, run away from them. They are full of BS. We all suck when it comes to our own companies because we're so much emotionally involved. Yeah. You no matter how good you are at mindfulness and emotional intelligence and I don't know what, it's impossible for you to step so much aside to look at it as somebody from the outside can. It's impossible. We all get stuck. Maybe less, but we still get stuck. We still do mistakes.
Talking about the emotion, I actually was on an appointment the other day, a real estate appointment, and we were talking about that idea that I've sold enough properties, over 200 and some properties, whatever. But the first time I ever sold my house by myself, I was emotional about it, and that's the thing. Like, sometimes you have to remember to kind of step out of it, but it's hard to do that if it's your own business, own thing you do on a daily basis. So I totally agree.
Yeah. So that's one thing, and then of course, Maybe you prefer somebody who knows more from a theoretical point of view. And if that's what works for you, then of course look at, their certification, universities, and so on. I mean, you're free to decide what's important for you. Like for me personally, I try to look at people who have gone through the trenches and who are open to share the good and the bad. That for me is super important, because if they're not, I know that they are hiding something.
So the way, I mean, I've had a couple coaches. I mean, I'll get back. I've had coaches for the last couple of years. One thing that I was kind of putting the correlation with is personal trainers, right, for the physical coaching, right, and the mental coaching, right. And for what I noticed, at least for a lot of the coaches I had, was the physical coaches, the personal trainers, they would come up with ideas. So if you said, okay, well, I'm really trying to get this muscle right here to grow, like, okay, let's work on this, let's do this. Well, it seemed like a lot of the coaches that I had, that I was working with, they would say, okay, tell me what you did, tell me your numbers. And they wouldn't really give a lot of new insight into how to grow that muscle, that business muscle. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
What do you think is your take on how a coach should be? Is that the right way, or is there one way of doing it, or what you feel comfortable with?
I dearly love a friend of mine who is, in my view, an exceptional coach, but he's very methodological. So, the first thing he will ask you is, do you need a coach, a mentor, a teacher? And he's super focused on that. On the other side, I'm focused on results. And sometimes we need a life coach. Sometimes we need a therapist. Sometimes when I'm dealing with multiple founders, I feel like a marriage counselor between them. Then they need coaching, they need teaching. If it's something that's new to them, you need a teacher. If it's something where you already have experience, you just need somebody to ask you the right questions. Sometimes you just need somebody to brainstorm stuff with. So the way I do stuff, I just give my clients what I fully believe they need at a certain time, and I'm focused on getting them to the results they want. And sometimes that means letting them fail a little bit to reach a point of pain where they're ready to make a change. But yeah, I mean, you need to do your due diligence when it's a relationship. With your coach, you will work for a certain amount of time, whether that's 6 weeks, 8 weeks, or it's a 1-year program or whatever it is. It's a relationship. So you need to do a few dates. You need to check around. I never have a problem when somebody says, well, can I talk with some of your past students? Sure. Here you go.
How I know every client is different. Is there a set time or usual time that you feel that a coach needs to work with a person before they can see true results? Or is it just vary person to person?
I mean, the thing that I do when I'm not working with new entrepreneurs, so when it's new, we know where we need to start. But whenever I'm working with multiple 6, 7, 8, 9-figure entrepreneurs, I don't start anything before I do my due diligence. It's not a free service, but it's also very intensive. I go through numbers, resources, business development, their level of clarity. I talk with employees, with leaders, and so on from that company. So it's a very, very intense due diligence. But that is an outside perspective where they truly are right now, where they want to go, and what resources and leverages are available to get us from here to then, and what's missing. I mean, the thing is that it's either they're doing the wrong steps, or some things are not in place, or there are bottlenecks that we need to discover and then improve on those bottlenecks so that, the flow can go through the whole process. And I always start with the due diligence. After the due diligence, that's when we can start talking about any kind of coaching or support from my end. And then I also can tell them, we will do this and this and this. In this quarter, we'll focus on this, we'll focus on that. And this is where we expect the results. Then that's when I can promise results, because I have to do my own due diligence, and then, I can promise stuff.
Well, thank you, Mia, for being on the podcast, the Road to Growth podcast. If someone's looking for your services or trying to reach out to you, what's the best way of them getting in contact with you?
Go to Google, type in Fail Coach. I'm still the only one, so that's the easiest. And then they can go to any social media platform we post stuff on, or if they want to get in touch with me, the best thing is LinkedIn or Facebook. They can message me. I'm always very happy to have a chat. And yeah, that's more or less it.
Perfect. And then any last piece of advice? I know you've given a lot of great information. Is there any last piece of advice? Maybe someone's hesitant to reach out, but if you wanted to, just something that they can start their 2020 off right by.
One thing I'll be very quick. So very often, entrepreneurs tell me at any level, I need some oxygen money. I mean, not at any level. When they're, at big levels, they don't need that. But early stage entrepreneurs, they often tell me I need some oxygen money. There is this super easy technique that's called the leverage of trust, because, you have to skip the journey if you want some super short results. And so I started a Facebook group. They can go to facebook.com/groups/the leverage of trust. They can dive into, it's free. Anybody can join. They can dive in. I do live Q&As. I do live sessions in there. I answer their questions and so on. And they get everything that they need to know. In just about a month's time since I started that group, students in there, students, they already made more than 50K in just by leveraging that trust.
Wow. Well, we're going to have a lot of your links and information in the description for this podcast. So anyone listening right now, if you're looking to get more information for his Facebook platforms, LinkedIn, all that, we're going to have that in the descriptions here. Miha, I thank you for being on the podcast. I love your story, the idea of failure. I mean, that's the essence of what this podcast is about, is making sure people are aware that it's okay to fail. And what you've gone through, I think anyone out there, if today was a bad day or yesterday was a bad day, this gentleman right here has gone through a lot of stuff, and he's in a lot better place by putting a strong game plan together. So don't worry, you're not alone. Thank you again, Mia.
Thank you, Winnie. It was a pleasure to be your guest, and all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to The Road to Growth, Success of an Entrepreneur. Please like, subscribe, and stay connected. Visit www.theenriquezgroup.com.
Yeah, I created a website.
Hope to see you again next week. The Enriquez Group, signing off.